We got a lot of questions on drying.
Yeah.
Configuration of the racking, capacity of the racking. What could you tell us on the
Sure.
drying side of it?
You know, just like anything, with no different than cultivation, there's really no like silver bullet. Everyone's got a different style or method to doing things, and I think that Pipp's actually put together a really nice kind of portfolio of products depending on what your style is. So, as an example, some people are like whole plant drying.
Okay.
And so we've got some hooking options for them. They can all be adjusted in height depending on the size of the crop. So another challenge with the cannabis plant is that they're never uniform. You know, it's not like a Monsanto tomato. They're very
individual.
Yeah, they're very unique. And so building that flexibility, in a lot of cases, very light tool work or even no tools to be able to adjust the height of something or the width of the racks as well. So as we kind of look at this one, we can turn that knob and we can slide.
Yep.
So if we had a wider plant, we could go with more of a width there, and if we had a lower density, we could tighten them up together. I'm a big fan of the hooks that just kind of stand as it is, so if we were to look at it, this is not a cannabis plant. Oh yeah. But it's a great example. So as you were to go to hang a plant, you know, a lot of people will end up having to use hooks or zip ties, and these are just extra steps. And a lot of these groups will have to do, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 of these in a day. And the drying and moisture content can change quite a bit from the first part of the batch of the morning and the last batch. And you're trying to get as much of this done as fast as possible. So anytime you can eliminate steps, that's a really good thing. So Pipp here on the adjustable, let's say I just harvested this, you would use the plant as the hook, right?
Okay.
And that's the idea. You're not having to weave it into anything, but you just put it on here and you go.
How many do you think we could fit on these fingers?
It just depends on the size of the plant and what in an ideal situation, which is not everybody's situation. I really like the 2, but if you had to go for 3 for any reason, it's totally doable. And the other thing is 80% of the moisture of this plant is really going to be lost in the first like 72 hours. So where it seems really packed, dense, even on 4. So you're like, oh, that's a lot. But in,
They're going to reduce
but in
volume.
72 hours, 80% of the moisture is going to be lost from the plant. And plants are just like us, they're mostly water. And so this, which looks bulky today, would shrink down significantly. It would look more like, you know, something like this. But I like the flexibility, the easy to clean. Option 2, right? So yeah, fingers option 1. Option 2 is the hang bar. Some people we talked to, they might be using like a hooking mechanism, right?
Cool.
And
So would that be considered for different plants, different size of plants, or is just the technique that is
I think it's
preferred?
preference, right?
Yeah.
And what I always encourage operators to do is I'm like, get out the stopwatch and time it.
Okay.
How long does this take? And how long does this take? And how long does that take? And how many touches are you going to touch it? So what I love about the fingers is it's one less touch. You know, when you get into hooking, now we have a hook. Now we have a dirty hook. Now we have a hook that needs to be cleaned. Now we have this other component. It's
all about maximizing operations.
Exactly, and I mean that's what the foundation or bedrock of Pipp is maximization. The other option is very much on the space maximization side. So this is a common thing that we see with like the hemp farmers. They'll take a piece of trellis because it's quite cheap and they have it, and they'll string it from the ceiling, and they'll hang in each one of those little grid squares. They'll hang the plants or hook the plants. This one for me, the pros, you can fit a ton of biomass. Where if we kind of look here, you know, there may be some air gaps and things like that, which isn't a bad thing from an even homogeneous drying. If I knew my product was maybe going to extraction, and that I wasn't looking for like top shelf trim flower, this could be a really viable option to maximize space where simply was more cultivation than drying space. And that's a very common problem in the industry. I think most people would prefer this, but a lot of people will probably get forced into more of a higher density option potentially.
What are your thoughts on collection at the base of the dry racks? Leaving it open versus closed, making sure we're collecting any fallen cannabis?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for clean floors, and just from a safety standpoint. And yes, it might be some smaller, what they would call popcorn or even larf in some cases, but it's still a viable product that can be extracted. So I always want to try and catch on the bottom like this one. The other thing too is as these plants dry, because of the mass amount of moisture content that we talked about earlier being taken out of the plants, they tend to fall down. And so, you know, in some places, if that branch were to fall or that plant were to fall on the ground, it is a loss. So, you know, these the cannabis farmers, they have a lot of challenges, and there's no sense in taking all this time and energy and effort to then just let it hit the floor. So I always like the capture. A big question that I get a lot is, how do I sanitize and clean these products? Generally, and not everyone gets this opportunity, but in an ideal situation, you are filling your drying or curing room, chamber, zone, whatever the vernacular is there, in the same day, and you're emptying it in the same day.
Okay.
And then you're doing a full room sanitation. The alternative is some people get stuck into a perpetual cycle where they'll have to take product that's been drying for 7 days, and they'll bring in product that's now just being harvested.
So is there a way to clean sections and not the entire place? The efficiency and
Would you do it by the carriage, like first in, first out kind of situation?
You know, it sounds like it would make sense from like a restaurant standpoint or most other manufacturing practices, but the issue is that 80% of moisture content that left those plants that are near the plants that are now in this further drying stage, they re-moisten this. And it changes the composition of the bud itself. It goes to, as in layman's terms, almost to like a spongy material, and it really does interrupt the value and quality of the cure itself. The issue I always have too is I always want full room, and even this is in cultivation as well, so this translates very well into the next topic, but I always want full room sanitation. I always want to start at zero. Let's say that you had a clean product on a batch, and let's say you had a product that had some powdery mildew as an example.
high risks?
High risk. So segregation is key. Now, as far as sanitizing this stuff, we've talked about this before, but this product is anti-fungal, antibacterial coated, and that's a paint.
Baked into the powder coat?
Oh, it's baked into the powder coat.
What I understand, yeah.
And then, so that's, look, anytime we can do anything for these growers to help prevent where a potential blemish or cavity or some type of risk is there. So you have this nice baseline foundation for, Lassa, how are you?
Good.
Good. You want to join us?
Oh, so you guys, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Actually,
pre-Pipp, Kronos Group was one of the first people to have a greenhouse product in Canada.
That's true, actually, I assembled it myself.
And he assembled it himself.
Yeah,
Oh, well done.
yeah, it was in B2 and B3, we had this greenhouse.
Yeah, this is actually Team Canada right here. Kronos
Based on
Group had the
Montreal.
first licensed facility in Canada. So they make several sanitation products. A really great company is Biosystems. They make a BioFoamer and a BioFogger. And they're ways to truly disinfect the product. So oftentimes people will tell me that something is clean, and I know that depending on how you were raised, clean means something very different to different people. So I always say clean and sanitize. And I think the key word is sanitize. So using the BioFoamer is really nice because you can actually foam it. It's kind of, imagine like a paint sprayer, and you can see
Cover all
exactly where it adheres
Completely
to.
covers itself.
Yep, it self-dissolves, no secondary rinse.
Okay.
Beautiful. I do like to also just basically fog out the entire room as a last step. So we would just fog and sanitize every nook and cranny of the actual racks. And this goes for both cultivation and for post-harvest processing.
How does that compare? I hear a lot of growers talking about just going along and ISO wiping everything. So what would be your thoughts on that in comparison to
Sure.
cleanliness levels?
Isopropyl alcohol is a big issue for the industry. Well, first of all, it's very expensive. Actually, I should say, first of all, it's not very safe, right? It's a flammable material. We usually work in closed and sealed environments, and so when you're working with a lot of isopropyl alcohol,
VOCs.
you get a lot of volatile organic compounds
Yes.
and buildup, and it can cause some health-related issues for people. So we can always grow more plants, but we always want to think about human safety, and that's a lot of the foundation of Pipp as well. The issue with isopropyl alcohol is you can miss a spot. It's expensive.
You're relying on your hand. You just go and wipe it
Yeah,
out.
and it's so easy to miss something. So imagine you're cleaning, and I'm like, "Hey, Jess," and you turn, and we have a quick conversation.
Like, I think I want
Yeah,
here.
exactly, and it's why I'm a big advocate for the BioFoamer. I like to see the adhesion.
It's foam. It's a foam product.
It is.
So, and then with all these sort of crevices in the rack too, we're not having to go in.
Think about it like almost like well, great stuff is not a good example, but it's expansive foam, so as long as you get the good coverage, it'll go pick up all the little nano kind of micro pockets.
Sounds really easy.
It's nice. And I think that was a lot of the Pipp mentality with the trays was, as growers who worked on the trays, you know, back in 2013 and 14, we wanted something that was easy to clean. When you're trying to turn over a flowering room, you want to do it as fast as you can, right? And some people will tell you, oh, it takes us a week to harvest the plants and then it's another week to clean the rooms. And I mean,
a long time.
That's a long time.
It's a long time.
You know, in a perfect world, you want to be cleaning a zone out the same day that you finish harvesting it, and that harvest should be the same day.
Start to finish, how many hours from we finished the harvest and the new cycle has started?
Yes.
It's a good question. In a perfect world, I think you want to basically model your flowering room takedown size. So let's say it's a 2,000 square foot zone. Well, you need to be able to harvest a 2,000 square foot zone in an 8-hour shift period, right? But on the sanitation side, the nice thing is once you get all the people out of there, then you can have like a more of a secondary shift. It can be a night shift where they come in and do all the sanitation. The next day, you are repopulating your room. That's the ticket. You start getting into those metrics, and now we start talking about 6.7, depending on your cultivars. If you have really fast 7-week cultivars or shorter in some cases for people, you can get 7 turns a season, or a year, I'm sorry. Now we start talking about really great financial metrics. So that's why it was so important for us to make sure that these tables were really easy to clean and that we had good tools to help people clean and service the racks themselves. And if you're doing crop steering and some advanced substrates like the rock wool as an example, you can get 7 crops a year with the right cultivars.
Quite amazing.
It's really amazing.
Quite amazing.
And you look at the financial metrics and, you know, some people are like, oh, how much does this cost? You know, you look at the Pipp system and you're like, this looks pharmaceutical. I hear that as a big feedback. You know, a lot of this meets GMP requirements. We've worked really hard to make sure that any GMP-related issues were resolved.
Cleanability, that's what it's about.
Yep.
GMP is all about cleanability.
Making sure that things are sealed.
Yep.
We've switched over a lot of components into stainless steel components as well.